Voiceover Coffee Shop, Episode 4.
Welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we share our morning with some of the finest names in voiceover. And now, here's your host, voice actor Andrew Morrison.
Hi there. My name is Andrew Morrison, and welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we start our day with some of the finest names in voiceover. If you'd like to learn more about me, feel free to visit my personal website at www.voicebard.com. In this episode, I continue my coffee with Paul Strikwerda, founder of nethervoice.com and Dutch English talent trusted to voice brands recognized worldwide. In our last coffee chat, we discussed how he stays top of mind for potential clients and presents the value of himself as a voiceover artist. Today, we talk to Paul about a traumatic event that changes how he views the voiceover industry and the resources that have helped him along the way to become the well-known voiceover talent that he is today. He also teaches us of the work that goes in to make an impact as an instigator and an inspirator in his own growth as a person. So, of the mass amounts of information that you've learned over the years, if you were to take a piece of that back to yourself, that when you first started, what would that piece of information be?
From when I first started? I mean,
If you were to write a letter
yeah.
now and time travel it back to when you first picked up a microphone and decided VO is what I'm going to do, what would you write to yourself?
I love that question. And finally, you got me to shut up for a little bit, which is very hard. Because it makes me very emotional, because it connects me to my former self.
Right.
And because I really started this not taking it really seriously. I mean, I missed radio, as I said to you, and I kind of as a joke got into voiceovers in the first place when I was 17 years old, working for a Dutch radio station. And then I came to the United States at the end of 1999. And kind of as a joke, I went to this casting agency in Philadelphia, and one thing led to another. So one of my big things is that I don't take myself too seriously. And I don't take what I do too seriously. I mainly have a lot of fun. And that sounds like a cliche thing to say, but the moment I don't have fun doing it, I have to stop it altogether.
You've got to have fun.
You have to, absolutely. And this is an outrageously silly thing to do, because what other profession in the world makes you do an alien voice as the first job in the morning, and then the last job in the day is you can be a lap dog, you know? There's nothing such like it in the whole wide world.
Right.
And it doesn't even matter what you look like. Thank goodness. I can do this in complete anonymity. I can make money in my PJs and make people very happy. I can make people laugh. I can make people cry. I can help people be better people. And for instance, I was thinking about medical narration that I did the other day. And some might say, this is the most boring thing that you do, but I get hired a lot by pharmaceutical companies to talk to doctors about the latest medication or medical interventions. Because somehow, if I have a different accent, a different tone of voice, and a different script, I can sound very, people think I'm a doctor who knows everything about everything. So I sound trustworthy. And it's great. It's great speech therapy too for me. But what I do is I talk about medications and different interventions that ultimately are going to help people and help people save lives. So it's more than about the text that we do, more about the money that we make, but it's about helping people help others, saving lives, and teaching them things they've never heard of. Or when we do audiobooks, we transform them into different worlds, take them out of this world, which is sometimes a big pit of misery, and give them some entertainment, transport them to a different environment with different characters, put different ideas between their ears. And we can do it in such an intimate way that no one else can do that. Because when you wear your headphones and you hear someone's voice, no one gets closer to you than that. Even when you watch television, there's always this distance between you. But the moment you put on your cans, that person almost gets inside of your head, and that's us. We can tell that story. We can move people with our words, with our tonality, with the pauses that we take, with a little melody. We can paint pictures with our words. I tell people part of our job is to create worlds with our words. What other profession gives you the opportunity to do that? And what is more satisfactory than that? I ask you, what is better than that?
Right.
Paint worlds with our words and transform people, hopefully for the better, and ourselves too, because I've learned a tremendous lot about myself. And that's what I want to tell my past self, because that was how you started this question. Because I mentioned it in the beginning of this conversation that 2 years ago, I was in this very spot that I'm sitting now, and I had a massive stroke. I woke up at the bottom of the floor of my studio, not knowing what was going on. I had a terrible headache, and I tried to get up, but I was paralyzed because half of my body was paralyzed and half of my face was paralyzed. I would talk like this. I talked like a drunken sailor. It's all the classic signs of a stroke. And my door was closed. I'm in the soundproof room and I was home alone. Can you imagine the panic that set in?
Right.
Because I tried to bounce on the walls. Soundproof room is a soundproof room. And I'm in this basement in Pennsylvania, which has very thick walls as well. And I thought this is the end of it. This is the end of it. But fortunately, I'm going to be very succinct. But fortunately, I was supposed to be at a meeting where my wife was at, and I didn't show up, which was very unlike me. And she got this strange feeling, and she said, "You know what? Something's wrong with him." So in that meeting was the chief of police, and she said, "Can you have one of your men checking on Paul? Because something tells me, my gut feeling, something's wrong." And he took it seriously, and thank goodness he did. They went into the house and did a wellness visit and heard somebody banging on the door. And they opened it in time because I don't have ventilation in my studio, right? There's no ventilation because I was literally suffocating in my own studio. And when they opened the door, like you heard this noise of the fresh air being sucked in. And I took this huge breath. I felt like one of those divers that goes down like 100, I don't know, meters or whatever it is. You have these deep divers, and then they come up, and their first breath of air is like, oh, I felt alive again. And I was medevaced to a stroke unit, and they did a medical intervention, which basically saved my life. But as a result, I could not speak for quite a while. And when I started speaking, I could not access my emotions. It was like the door was locked behind a door. I sounded very robotic, and my pronunciation was like this. And I could read text like a robot would read text. And it was a pretty scary situation, especially when you're a voiceover and you depend on your voice for a living, when you can't speak anymore, at least clearly. I mean, I sounded like this, and I could not access my emotions. That was a weird thing. I could hear how I was supposed to say certain things, infuse them with feeling, but I couldn't get them out. There was this disconnect between what my brain wanted to do and what my mouth was capable of doing. But with a lot of speech therapy, a lot of people helping me, also neuropsychologists, we're having conversations every single week, which I still have, with the right people in your team and the people as a partner as well. I got there eventually to the point that I can work again, speak again, and make a little bit of sense again, and infuse my words with emotion. Sometimes I get over emotional. But what I wanted to tell my young self is that no matter what happens to you, you will be okay, because you're faced probably the worst nightmare that people can face, like near death. And you came out all right. And in many respects, I feel better than the person I was before I had that stroke, because I feel much more connected with what's important in life. There's so many things that are not important in life that we think is important, like things in life. They're not important. When you're nearly dying on the floor of your studio, you're not thinking about, oh, I wish I could bring all the things that I've accumulated. No, that's not important at all. But The one thing is, whenever I encounter trouble in my life, I think, it will be okay. It will always be okay. You will come out on the other side because I've already survived the worst thing that could happen. And if I could tell that my younger self, I wouldn't be as anxious or as worried or as nervous as I was then, because I was anxious, I was nervous, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was easily intimidated. I had this fear of failure. Am I doing it okay? I was so ready to please people because I wanted them to like me, all these things that you feel when you're beginning in your career. You want to do well. You're not certain about yourself. And now my older self knows that it's going to be fine. And if people don't like me, it's going to be okay too. If they hire me, fantastic. If they don't hire me, that means they'll hire a colleague. So I made somebody else happy. So I can't really lose. Either they hire me and I'm happy, or they're picking my colleague and I'm happy for them. So that outlook of life, that's something I want to tell my younger self.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love how warm this community is, because even from day one, I would say, hey, I'm setting up my booth and I could use a couple of suggestions, expecting the people that have been here for ages being like, oh, figure it out and research it yourself. But the amount of people that were willing to hop onto a Zoom call with me, the amount of people that now recommend me and say me and somebody else are auditioning for the same job. I don't get, oh, you got that job. I don't get that tension with them. They congratulate me. They're excited for me because they think of it as, this is what the producer wanted
Yeah.
and you delivered and you did a phenomenal job of it. And the same goes if I refer somebody else and they get
Hmm.
the job.
Yeah.
You're what they wanted. You are able to fit that role better than I ever could. Congratulations. And I've never seen that in any other industry I've worked in.
The great thing is, and this is my theory, because I've worked both in television and in radio, I've met people who do their work on camera most of the time and who are in the public eye, and people who do their work in anonymity, the unseen heroes in the business. That's us, the disembodied voices. And I think that being in the public eye, being on camera, messes people up in a weird way, because it makes them feel more self-important about them, because everybody sees them, watches them all the time, and wants to have their autograph, and they get this inflated ego, thinking that they're better than other people, and making them worry about the superficial parts of the job. Is my hair okay? Does my butt look big? Things that are completely irrelevant. We get down to the core, and because looks don't matter, and fame doesn't matter, we can do our work in anonymity and almost in silence. We can leave our egos out of the door. And once you do that, you can be real. You can be you, and you can rejoice. You don't think like, oh, that person took my job, and because of that, I'm missing out this. No, you get like, I'm so glad for you. I'm glad that I could recommend you, because you know what? When you look good, I look good because I recommended you. This camaraderie, and it's a tremendous energy. And some people sometimes ask me, why should I ever go to a voiceover conference? Because it's just a bunch of voiceovers talking about how great they are, trying to sell their
Not at
books and their
all.
trainings and whatever. And it's, I said, have you ever been there? No, I never want to go there. It's just big inflated egos and la la la, and telling people that by the good old days. So, you should go, because there's nothing like it in the entire world. Like, I remember the last time I was at Voice of Atlanta. I walked into the huge room at the beginning of the first opening session, and there were probably 1,000 of us there. Imagine 1,000 voiceovers. Many of them met for the first time in person, but the energy, the positive energy, I mean, you could almost float on it. It's something that you can feed off of, that is incredibly nourishing, incredibly warming, heartwarming, and validating. And it's a lot of people who are just rooting for one another. Unlike anything I've ever felt in the entire world, the warmth, the openness, the camaraderie. And that is something you cannot explain, you cannot put into words, but that feeds you, that feeds your soul. And that's the great thing about this community. We have people that help one another, not because it makes them look good, because it makes the other person look good. And that's a quality in life that we can use overall in society, which also, by the way, makes it very easy to leave these conferences, because once you're on cloud nine for a couple of days, you have to leave everybody, say your goodbyes, and then you go to public transportation where people look at you and they don't smile anymore. They don't say hi. How are you doing? You step on board of a plane and everybody's like, uh. And then you realize the rest of the world is not like us. We're a pretty special community. Pretty special.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. So, going back to when you felt like you had lost the emotion in your voice from your stroke, how were you able to get that back? Was there an emotional trigger that led to that, or?
No, not really. First of all, I needed to get my equipment back,
Mhm.
because part of my face was paralyzed. So part of my voice, my instrument, was not able to recreate that voice. So I did a lot of speech therapy where I had to learn how to articulate. And they put equipment that vibrated around my jaws and around my what do you call this part?
Your
Your
larynx?
no, larynx, yes. That vibrated all the time, so it would warm up my voice and shake it back into shape.
Oh, I think I need one of those for when I haven't had my coffee yet.
Well, it felt a little bit like electroshocks. It's like a very what's that thing, the pulse thing, or what is it? People use it to lose weight when you put these electrodes on
Right.
whatever part of body you want to use, and they start vibrating your six pack, and without any conscious effort, you all of a sudden have a six pack. Now, there's a name for it, but anyway, they put that on my face and on my larynx, and that helped tremendously. But you start with small things, 2-syllable words, and from 2 to 3, and to more complicated words, from words to sentences, from sentences to paragraphs. And they gave me like, okay, let's say you're Sherlock Holmes and you're going to read the script as if you were Sherlock Holmes. It was really basic actors training. Or read the script as if you were in love with the person that you're talking to, or you're the most outrageous person that you've ever seen, and you want to scream it from the top of the hills to reach the person in the last seat in the house. Do that. So they really challenged me to be ridiculous and to really get out of my comfort zone and to warm this up, get the equipment ready, and so. What that did to me was that not only warmed up my voice, but it also warmed up the neural networks, the neural pathways that told my brain, that had my brain access those emotions again. It's like telling people, okay, show them a map of the destination, give them the way of getting there, and then enjoy that ride and going for it, and be shamelessly ridiculous. And that's what I loved about it. It was totally freeing me up, which I still use, because it doesn't matter how ridiculous I get, because I've done it all. I've been that silly person, and I've made myself laugh and cry, and it's like acting training, really. And through that, I got to try on different personalities, and eventually that came back and crystallized into the different me, because I had to learn to accept that I would never be the old me. Never, ever, because as they say, you cannot step back in the same river twice. I cannot get back the brain cells that I lost. I had to discover that there was a new Paul, and I had to be okay with that Paul. Because as you notice throughout this conversation, I stumble on my words. I have to find certain words, and I have to be okay with that. I'm not as articulate anymore, and as well spoken as I think I used to be, and I had to learn to live with that. And that is the new me. I had to accept me the way I was and rediscover what it is that I am now. So it was a journey of self-discovery through my stroke. And that's why I say I never recommend people doing silly things so they will get strokes. But I'm really looking back on this and say, well, ultimately, I started caring about different things and become more of the person that I really want to be. I like myself more, I think, than before the stroke, because I care about people more. I care about myself more. and I'm more aligned with what's important to me in life. I no longer have to impress people, because what good that does that do you? I no longer have to make tons of money. For what? I don't not have to prove anything to anybody. What I need to do is just enjoy my life and make use of what I can. Because one thing that didn't go away was my vocal stamina. As you can hear throughout this conversation, my voice is getting more hoarse. So I cannot do the whole long form narration the way I used to be. I used to be able to talk for 4 or 5 hours on end. At the end, my voice used to sound the same as in the beginning. I can't do that. I mean, I'm doing my first audiobook again, and after like 10, 15 minutes, I listen back to myself at the end of the session and at the beginning of the session, and I really hear my voice deteriorating. So I've learned to work with my limitations and learn to do more with less. That's also a good metaphor for life. My whatever we do with our voice, whatever I do in our life comes out through our voice. We cannot camouflage it. If you're having a bad day, you will hear it. If you feel great, if you're in love, if you're on cloud nine, you will hear it. It's taking the mask off, becoming really who we are. And ultimately, I think that's the point of life, becoming who we're meant to be. Boy, I'm getting philosophical here, right? But that's really what it is, becoming,
Yeah,
daring
absolutely.
to be who we're meant to be and finding out who it is that we are, so that we can help others on our path as well.
So who do you feel like you want to be this upcoming year? I mean, everybody's working on their marketing plans for the new year right now. Everybody's working on what industries they want to work in within the voiceover community, what impact they want to make on either the voice acting community or in their own lives in general. So what does that mean for you? What impact do you want to make? What work do you want to obtain? What steps are you taking that you've planned this year?
Well, two words come to mind. I want to be an instigator and I want to be an inspirator. I love,
I
I
love
love,
that.
I want to push envelopes and push people's buttons as much as I can, because my whole blogging is about creating responses. Because you know if you that's the whole thing. If you clap and nobody hears you or whatever it is, but the sound of one hand clapping. What's this thing about if
But
this happens and nobody hears it? Tell
if a
me
tree falls in the forest,
exactly. Yes, yes,
right,
yes. And nobody hears it. So what, right? So
right.
I want to be that tree who falls in the forest, but I want to be heard. And that's my platform. I want to use my platform to make people think about what it is they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they can do it better as a freelancer. And the metaphor for me is the voiceover world. My work is a voiceover, but really anybody who is a self-employed um, contractor, independent contractor, I want them to read my stuff and recognize through what I do, what they do, and how they can become better people as professionals, but also as people. And I know that I cannot make people do things they don't want to do. But what I can do is plant seeds. So I see myself as a gardener who's planting those seeds, not through giving them necessarily facts and data, but by being a storyteller, doing what voiceovers do naturally. We are storytellers, giving people ideas in their minds and have them gestate a little bit, percolate a little bit, and then come up with things that they want to do for themselves that make their lives better and make their clients happier and ultimately make them more successful as a professional. And if it means me stirring the pot, being a little bit provocative, calling out certain things in our industry that I like calling out because I've lost every fear of consequence. Because some people have said to me in the beginning, oh, wow, you can't really say that about this pay to play because they'll never hire you again. You can't really say this about this person because, and I've done it and I'm still here and I really don't care anymore. Like I said, I've lost my fear because the worst thing that could happen to me happened to me. I'm lost my inhibitions. I'm not going to take all my clothes off and run around screaming hallelujah, but I've lost most of my inhibitions. I feel free to say what I can do and take my people to a place where I think it's a better place. And we always talk about, the grass is always greener. Well, I think that through my career, through my life, I've seen different lawns with different types of grass, and I can tell people, well, look it over the edge and see if I think it's better over there. And I can tell you how to get there because I've been there. And if I can get there, you can get there. I mean, if a silly person like me from the Netherlands, whose language, your English is not my native language, and I'm not really a trained voiceover, I'm a trained radio guy. When I came to the United States, I knew nobody. I just took a chance one day going to a silly cattle call at a casting agency. If a silly person like me can have a blog with 40,000 people and does not have to actually find his clients to beg them for work, but clients come to me and ask me to work for them. If I can do it, you can definitely do that. So that's a little bit of hope that I want to impart. And if they ask, how do you get there? I can help them. I coach people now in teaching them my way, teaching them the Strikwerda, the Nether voice way. And some people say, oh, yeah, well, you're all doing this so you can make more money out of your coaching. Well, I tell them that's ridiculous because I can make much more money doing a 30-second commercial than I do like in 30 coaching sessions, really. Honestly.
And it's difficult to book you as a coach.
I don't want to work with people. No. I jokingly say that, but I discourage people to work with me because I want them to try harder to convince me that I should work with them.
Right.
I really put up a high barrier not because I think I'm special, but I want to find out whether people really, really want this. And that way, when I make it really hard, the barrier of entry is really high. I know that it will only get the people who are truly motivated and who have what it takes to be a successful coaching student of mine. Because I don't want people to say, oh, I took a couple of sessions and it was okay. I didn't do much. No, I mean, I can tell people lots of things and I write about things, they can read about it, and yet it doesn't make an impact. It doesn't make any change because they don't do anything with what I tell them to do. I only want students who follow up and take action, not just listen to me and massage their ego and tell them what nice voice they have. They don't grow for that. I want people who grow with them and are willing to take a risk and to take action, not just pay lip service. So that's why I make it hard. But, I don't coach people for the money, and I don't promote myself because I want to make money. No, I coach people because I want to help those people. And it gives me tremendous satisfaction too when I hear people book jobs that I never thought would be possible. And I hear them grow as a person, because that's part of the work that I do in my coaching sessions too. Like you and I do here. I mean, it started off as a conversation about voiceovers, but we really talk about life, really. There's really an excuse, this whole series, whether you realize it or not, to be talking about who you are as a person and what's important to you and what drives you. What you said, what do you have to tell your young self? What do you want to tell yourself 20 years from now? That's another question. Yeah. Who are you really? Because everything comes out through our voice. We cannot masquerade it. We can pretend, but it comes out. If you're having a bad day and you need to talk to a client, I've had bad days in the past and I had to say to the client, sorry, not today, because I've just had bad news and I can't give you what I want. Unless you're a great big fat liar and a super actor, which I'm not, everything comes out. And we can use that. We can channel that. We can use those bad or challenging moments in our life to connect to when we have to open that part of ourselves when the read requires it. So that's the great thing that people often ask, why do bad things happen? Because we can tap into these experiences whenever it's appropriate. Whenever we feel our best, we can tap into it. And whenever we feel our worst, we can tap into that. We just need to remember those moments and give ourselves permission to be vulnerable and open up. And when I'm talking to you about on different levels, because I'm also thinking about the client relationship that we have as voiceovers, but also the relationship that we have with the people who are dearest and nearest to us, and the relationship that we have with ourselves. It's about being honest with ourselves and being honest with the people that are close to us in our life. And I think that voiceovers has taught me that too, to be honest with yourself, to be honest with your client, and to be honest with those people who love you the most and who know you best. And to dare to be vulnerable and to dare to even be not your best self. And all of that, this whole voiceover thing is a huge magnifying glass for who we are as a person and what makes us tick. And when I read, with colleagues read and what they hear, what they say, I'm listening on those levels. Not necessarily, what are you telling me about your job? Because I don't think that's so interesting. What are you telling me about the person that you are? And what you want to share? And what is it that you're hiding from me and from the world?
Because the microphone will pick up what you're thinking, not what you're saying.
Absolutely. The microphone is relentless, relentless. And even the way we breathe, when I feel bad, my breathing is different. I have to take out many more breaths when I don't feel really myself than when I feel super and I'm pumped inside. I take deep diaphragmatic breaths that comes from, and my voice sounds more resonant and I sound more self-assured. There's no way that we can hide from ourselves, which is scary, but it's a revelation. That's a gift as well that we give ourselves and the people around us. And it's all through this voiceover thing, and it's beautiful. And part of that I tap into and I try to write about and I connect with. And the beautiful thing that's happening is that I have this whole community of readers from all over the world now. I jokingly say, you call this a voiceover coffee drinking session. I could literally step on a plane right now, not knowing where my destination is, and I land somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I know where I am, and I know that I'm going to have a couple of friends in the voiceover world that want to have me over for coffee. And that's terrific. That's all the connections and how enriching this is in my life. To me, that's even more important than doing some stupid script about some stupid drug or some stupid product that I'll never use in my life. Yeah, it's that human connection, really. It's that human connection that we establish through our voice that matters most. That makes it so beautiful and so unique.
I really hope you got as much out of this session as I did. I would like to thank Paul for taking the time out of his busy schedule to discuss with us the eyes through which he sees the world, and teaching us about our value, not only as voiceover talent, but as people. If you'd like to know more about Paul, you can visit him at www.nethervoice.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Voiceover Coffee Shop. For more information on guests, new episodes, and more, be sure to visit www.vocoffeeshop.com.